Welcome everyone to another session. Let's see, we've got about 36 folks here. Thank you for sharing again in the chat for another group. So yeah, like I said, I want to this be fairly interactive. I think that we could take just a few minutes, and if we look at this recap section of the board, I'd love to just take like 5 minutes and everybody kind of grab some stickies and just like we kind of like have three topics that we went through so far. One was like the prehistory of DAOs. One was this like live session where we summoned our first DAO together. We also talked through some like DAO patterns and DAO language. Let's just like take a few minutes, like think through what we learned from these things and like maybe some takeaways. So that we so I'll start a timer. I'll try not to make this too like project managey. Should be fun, not I'll start like
the Miro allows you to play music too.
Yeah, let's see, so I can pick chill beats, or actually cosmic vibe.
Cosmic vibe, no better choice.
Actually, let me share audio. Is that playing?
It is. Sounds great.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm gonna write down some notes too. I learned a lot from his prehistory. What screen am I sharing? Is it my whole screen or just Miro?
Or whole screen. Actually, yeah, it's on your calendar right now.
Oh, interesting.
It was on the Miro for maybe before you were messing with the music. There it is.
Awesome. Cool. This was actually really fun for me to be able to have a moment to like brain dump about all the stuff that and just like get back into the mode of like what we've talked about the last couple of weeks. So I'm down to just kind of read through some things, unless anybody feel free to like unmic yourself, and if you have anything specific you wanna share with the group.
If I might call on some people who I saw active, I saw Dom, John, maybe Shiloh. If any of you three might help us with what you guys were thinking.
Yeah, I was really struck in the last session about the way that just the Moloch structure of DAOs. I think it has become a little bit more complex, but initially it was like you can only join and you can only quit, and you can't like receive. There was like a very small set of rules that then enabled complex functionality. And that was something that I hadn't quite understood about how many DAOs are structured.
Thank you, Tom. Any?
I can chime in for a sec. What I wrote was the DAOs are the coordination layer of Web3. The tech is powerful, but it only works if we build community around it. I think the last session was just a great reminder of generally how easy it can be to actually set up a DAO. And at the same time, if you don't actually have a community of users, the technology doesn't do anything. And so I've been spending a lot of time thinking about like, how do we build community in these new spaces? Which is, I think there's things we can learn from the past, but it also is this challenging new world to try and build community and then manage community that then can actually use these tools to make a big difference in the world.
Yeah, it seems like relative to the community building versus the tech side, it's like it almost seems that the tech side is the easy part.
100%.
I would like to respond. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Chavo.
I love that somebody wrote the creating the DAO is the easy part. The governance is hard. And I feel like last week, or was 2 weeks ago when we did that, it really proved that. But to John's point, the actual governance is like, it's almost like a primal thing that we need to be able to have these communities. And how do we do that? And how we build those structures and work on them over time so that they're, seeped in trust and doing well, instead of just like, oh, we created a DAO, yay, end of story. So
well said, Shiloh.
Can I
think that's that's something that I've also been thinking about. The social layer is a little more complicated because you have humans on there and humans are messy and we're all coming from different backgrounds. And I think there's this notion that if we build the tools, it's going to fix it. I think the tools augment it. They expand our trust. But yeah, like I think the hardest part is community building. And I think to John's point, maybe there are other models that we could incorporate, like co-op model, sociocracy, holacracy, teal models, activist groups, K-pop stands. I think these are sort of like models that we could sort of like take inspiration from. How do they gather? What rituals do they have? How can we embed that into code? So those are the things that come to mind.
Hello. I just wanted to add to that, just thinking about humans when, they're leading them to committing to something like a DAO. One thing I'm experimenting with is making sure that upon entering a DAO, it's so focused on what we're doing and what you can do is limited. So, and then build from there. I find that people, in entering any new situation, if it's really focused what we're here, like there's never a point where I'm like, so why am I here? What am I doing? That sense of kind of idle thought, and keeping it very limited what you can do in the beginning, and kind of introducing the idea of a DAO by creating a very limited version or experience with a DAO and then building from there. I think sometimes we kind of get into it's like, I want to do this and I want to build this and I want people to be able to do this and that and the third. And maybe it in the beginning is scaling it back, especially for the masses just coming into this to make it easily explainable in a easy and explainable experience that they can then tell others. I think is really the key. Thank you.
I love those. I love those. There's another one that rhymes with what Hanifa, I think you just shared. I don't know if you even wrote it, but the emergence of language around creating shared creative spaces. I think there's this like sense that there's the opportunity for open fields of exploration, and that within those, structure is of course needed, rituals, customs, practices, some maybe smart contract instantiated, but others socially, and how we use the simple ones that smart contracts can help us with, but also build healthy rituals around them. Feel like there's like a combination approach there.
And I think also a thing that I'm thinking about is this idea of culture. When exactly is it created? I think as an artist, I'm always tempted to design culture coming into it, but not leaving enough room for my community to actually do what humans naturally do when they start to gather in some sort of ritual sense. They start building their own, culture. So I think kind of reining even my artist head in, it's like, I don't have to build everything. I have to kind of trust the process itself, but making the entryway so easy, and something that, ooh, I want that. And then allowing the community as it grows to kind of create those kind of markers of culture, like, oh, we do this because of this. I'm just not thinking so much too far ahead for myself and kind of putting the cart before the horse is something that is a practice I'm definitely in right now.
Nice. Well, thanks everyone. Awesome lessons. This is like just fantastic feedback for understanding what we can focus on. What I'd love to do is just some more hands-on stuff. Like the goal of this exercise would be to let's split into like maybe five or so groups. So that would be about like 9 people per group, and then come up with just some ideas for like what's something that you think should be a DAO that's not a DAO. That's something that maybe that you've been inspired in the first couple of sessions is like, wow, this could be an interesting DAO and there's like a community that we could leverage. We're going to, after that session, we'll just have a chance to talk about the DAOs that we've created, and then maybe reorganize into into things that we find interesting. Once we come to some consensus around like DAOs that we think are interesting as a group, I think that we could start applying some lessons around tooling that we've had from the past, but then also just have some like really fun discussions around like maybe quitting our own DAO that we created if other ones seem more interesting. So I have some inspirations here. Please don't limit yourself to anything that is in my head, because like there's so much more that you can do. But like some ideas that I had were like a la Raid Guild, we're a group of freelancers that are like pooling resources, like subscriptions to SaaS products, like pooling client bases, pooling project managers, so that we can stay independent but act as a DAO. Maybe we're an investing club that supports underserved founder communities, or like we're going to create an NFT collecting museum to preserve Web3 culture. I just had a call an hour ago where I was just helping like this like Burning Man camp set up their DAO for their camp this year. So they're like 8 people that are learning how to do Web3 just so they can manage their Burning Man camp, which I feel like so many Burning Man camps are going to be DAOs this year. Or like maybe we're artists that are trying to onboard people into a new medium. So there's a few prompts that I think make sense for just like let's do random rooms and then just kind of see where things shake out, see what comes out of the chaos. We'll have a chance to look at the goals of some different like missions we might choose for a DAO, come to some rough consensus around what seems fun to do. What roles do you actually need? So like not just tools, like we don't even need to talk frameworks yet, but like what community roles do you need? Do you need Like, do you need a community manager, one like kind of a lawyer, one like a specialist in like treasury? Like, what roles would you need to make that DAO a success? What does it mean to be a member? Do people like hold a token? Do people like hold an NFT? Are they like just, do you want to just say like, let's worry about that later. Let's just create a community. What are you managing, like funds and assets wise? Like, are you managing investments? Are you managing things like, and then what are the rules to join and leave? I think this kind of boils down to most of the things a DAO needs. Add more if I'm wrong. I'll give a quick preview of the template. So over here on these like breakout room templates, we have this like some space to brainstorm on ideas. Once you choose one, somehow decide amongst yourselves how to vote on where the star goes as far as like what is the DAO that you choose. What roles, so yeah, ideas for new DAOs, or like maybe like you do want to like talk about a current project that you're like a DAO that you're trying to launch. Kind of open-ended. So like what roles does this DAO need? Like maybe you're like, oh, I'm starting this DAO right now, and I would maybe you'd love to have the help of this group on hacking on it. So membership, what does it mean to be a member? Like, how are we going to manage our funds? This, if you don't know the answers to these questions, as like you're just getting into DAOs, that's also fine. Just describe like what you're trying to accomplish. Once we have some of these filled out, which let's take like 15 minutes, I think each. If that's too quick, let me know. We'll have a chance to talk about our DAOs and then self-organize into DAOs that we find most interesting. If you were not in the DAO to begin with, you can put your name in this like applicants box, like you want to join. Maybe if you started here, you can like rage quit and like join a different DAO. A little open-ended, curious to see how it shakes out, but generally want to know like what do people want to exist as DAOs. So if I have some section here for Q&A, which we could do for a minute, like maybe raise your hand or speak up if you think a little bit of Q&A would be useful, or do you just want to jump into some breakouts?
My suggestion, Isaac, might be, well, we can pause. If anyone has questions, feel free. I'll actually just do that. Any questions? Okay, so when the breakout rooms form, you're going to be automatically put in a room. Please be mindful that there's 5 little areas that Isaac has wonderfully colored. So whichever room number you're in, please use that. So if you're in room 5, use the purple one at the bottom. In each room, there'll be 8 or 9 people. My instinct is that maybe 4 or 5 will be kind of the main contributors, but if everyone wants to contribute, you're all welcome to. If you prefer to be a bit more quiet, please feel free to do that as well, and just enjoy the space. I already know I want to be in Kia's DAO, so I'm going to try to figure out a way to sneak into that situation. But for now, I'll just end up in a random breakout room like each of you. And Isaac, I can click the magic button whenever you feel ready.
Yeah, yeah, pizza DAO. Yeah, let's split into rooms. Send me to a random one also. I'm excited to see what emerges.
All right. Rooms are open.
Hey, Melvin, are you also late for the DAO session? I just
Yeah.
joined. And I think people are in different breakout session right now.
Okay, let's ask. Let me ask the Leah.
Hey, everyone. This was really fun chaos. I hope people like it. Rapid creation. Pick a random icon that represents us. Oh yeah, grab a character from the top and like add it. Don't like steal it, just copy paste it.
Hey, Isaac, I didn't know if you needed help or you just wanted me to close the rooms.
That was it.
We have a fun.
Good good intuition.
Okay. We had to wrap up our our DAO. Whoa, there's some cool DAOs. But we haven't named ours. Okay. Cool.
Oh yeah. As you're coming back in here, have somebody put your DAO on the next steps page.
Meeting is being recorded.
This meeting is
There goes that idea. Love you, group 2.
Okay, DAOs.
We needed more time, but we at least got an idea that there was consensus around that we wanted to support.
nice. Yeah, that was some rapid jamming. So thanks for everyone. So yeah, as you're coming back, in the table to the right, just put your chosen mission, and then we'll just kind of go through like 2 minutes per DAO. Elect your spokesperson. Nice. So we've got group 4, we've got group 5 on here. If you also want to grab a character from the top that I stole from like some other Miro template, copy paste it into your members box and add your name, or choose a completely different character icon that you feel represents you better than these weird little monsters. I'm just excited to like write up a what the hell happened during this session post. I feel like it'll be really fun.
I think we have all the party people back. So the room
Excellent.
is,
Welcome everybody. Group 1, which I currently have marked by a flamingo. One of you want to present your DAO and try to attract people to, should we set a rule where like to join another person's DAO, you do have to quit the one that you have to betray your current one? I don't know, maybe that's arbitrary. So you can feel free to quit or put your name in the applicants box if you find this new DAO interesting. So group 1, want to go ahead?
Education, homeschooling, co-ops, and coordination. This is Joel.
I can take a stab at it. And anybody from our crew, feel free to jump in. Let me go back to a little board to make sure I cover the essence of it. But high level, it's this DAO or co-op model to really bring homeschooling, especially we talk a lot about children, and making sure that there is both education and support for teachers and students, and for people to be able to graduate into either one of those roles. So the students eventually becoming teachers as well, and being able to support an ever expanding ecosystem and additional roles that are important within this that we spoke about, where the DAO elder, somebody essentially understands this, the mechanics of a DAO and how to really properly guide and support this. In terms of membership, I think it's fairly represented by the groups we just talked about, the students, the teachers. We talked about this idea of neighborhood associations. Kia brought up that concept, which was incredibly important as a way for children to kind of learn in smaller communities in person, and that sense of play in person. So that was an important part of the roles as well that would inform our ownership. And then admittedly, we ran out of time.
All good.
Anything that I missed that anybody else wants to hop in on from our crew?
I think you got it.
Great work, guys.
All right, maybe Hanifa
flight.
or Shiloh, financial literacy though.
Is there anybody
Yeah.
else in the team that wants to speak? Hanifa?
Oh yeah, I don't mind speaking, but this wasn't my idea. This Naharika, I hope I repronounced her name correctly. This initially started. This was her idea, where she told the story of being a young adult and just getting her first job and having money, but not having the financial literacy to know what to do with it. And then as we spoke, or we talked as a group, we realized, but we affirmed the fact that financial literacy in general is a big issue in this country, and it's probably one of the main issues why there is wealth disparity in this country and empowerment within communities. So if I'm remembering correctly, she kind of described the DAO as a DAO where you can basically learn financial literacy. One of the issues that came up, we didn't want to get into securities or suggesting any financial advice. And so that this DAO is more about information and the practicing of that information, and maybe as a community coming together and the issues you're having with your you know what I mean? Maybe you don't know what I mean. I don't know what I mean. But just not crossing that line to where it's a securities issue or people are giving financial advice. So people are like, well, what about spammers? So then we had a short discussion around how we could filter people coming in using examples like friends with benefits, or you being invited in or being vouched in by other people, or maybe some sort of NFT gated access or consequence for spamming in some way, shape or form. But at the end of the day, it's about education and being together as you practice the education of growing your wealth or managing your wealth.
So I love that idea. That's essential for helping people yeah, that's really cool.
Seems like you got some new joiners as you were speaking, Hanifa, so good job.
Okay, hey.
Amazing. Effective altruism that I see Sean, Glenn, Will, anyone want to take a step?
I can kick it off, but would love for others to chime in if I missed anything. But so effective altruism is this community of people who are all keen on basically doing good better, and not just donating, but donating to causes that have the most impact, though the impact is sometimes hard to measure and up for debate. And so we thought this could be a really good way to bring in folks who are both donors, practitioners, beneficiaries of funds, and basically having a forum for them to discuss different philosophical questions, meet in real life, and then maybe control a pool of funds that can be routed either to direct beneficiaries or top charities or causes. And so that's it in a nutshell. Others want to add anything else that I might have missed?
I think it's great. I think it also provides potentially a platform for both experimentation on the fundraising side and how you raise funds and awareness for these types of causes, as well as experimenting with different projects and how to measure their effective impact and mix those things together.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Very cool. Very cool. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Glenn. I love the experimentation angles around Web3 and effective altruism. I think it's like a fertile ground to explore.
For sure. Michelle, do you want to talk variant DAO?
Sure, variant DAO. This is a DAO that memes together. It had to happen eventually, and so we were like, okay, let's do it. So there's a lot of conversation that we had around memes. So who preserves the library of existing memes, who forms memes, who gets rewarded. And I think an interesting point that we had here was that it kind of almost became a giant sociology experiment where we could have a meme archaeologist to go back and figure out who was the original creator of the meme, and if there was a meme that was traceable before the existing I guess, creator, then like that person is like the new creator. And so like, how do we even think about like storing memes? So like archiving them, you have different feels and different vibes of memes. So like some are more satirical and humor, some are more like, XKCD. So like, how do we even archive them and sort them in the right way? How do we store it? And how do we also promote like tokens or some reward for people who are able to super spread them and also get airdrops? So there's a lot of interesting conversation around token economics, and even what it looks like to rage quit. So like, do you get an anti-meme token that appears in your wallet that basically lists you as like a meme hater, which is a meme in itself. So I think it's and sort of the meta layer behind the variant DAO was a correlation to how COVID spread. So like there's different variants, and a lot of the value of memes actually comes from different variants. So like the Alpha, Delta, Omicron variant. So yeah, it was a lot of fun jamming. And if anyone else in the group wants to pitch in as well, I'll definitely welcome that.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is just like there's a lot of like knowledge in how librarians and archivists like really manage stuff like in these like the National Archives and stuff, and like I wanted to incentivize them to apply their skills to memes. Yeah.
I'm just going to do a quick shill on that too. Is we're building a bunch of the technology to do this with meme protocol that will trace back to original IP and then allow and kind of trace derivatives and
Awesome.
Effectively incentivize people to go and hunt down the original IP owner. So yeah, very cool.
I was gonna just give a shout out to Glenn as well. We talked about his project and I was like, wow, this is super cool. So if y'all are interested in memes, meme protocol is awesome.
So we're on the last one. I'll ask if Jason or if anyone would like to give a go on our Chef DAO project.
Yeah, I could give it a go. We actually had two competing DAOs that we couldn't decide upon. It was Dejimo's Tree DAO and Fang's in real life ping pong tennis DAO. And then Vivek told he was going to make us dinner after all this. And we're like, okay, if you're going to make us dinner, we're going to go vote for Chef DAO. And the purpose of that is really to find a good group of people gather in real life and to make dinners for each other. Right. Actually, let me switch the section that we actually took our notes. Yeah, so we talked about various people who would obviously cook, enjoy, and different levels of cuisines and preferences, and then memberships. Obviously supported people that love to eat. I think was a prerequisite, but then just the ability and the love of cooking and being invited to dinners and spending time in real life and enjoying kind of that in real life conversation with people. There's also a slant toward like local small providers, locally sourced products and whatnot. Funding, we actually talked about different models where there was an interesting model that we talked about in the DeFi topic of Rosca, where everybody kind of contributes a little bit of Rosca is like a savings plan for people where you contribute like a monthly amount, and then out of a lottery, one member of that community would get all the funds. So in a similar situation, everybody's contributing a monthly fund, and the chef or chefs involved in the cooking event would actually take those funds and make the meal out of it. And then we talked about how do we grow it, and I think that just kind of word of mouth. Like there is a concept called underground dinners, where kind of black market chefs would hold essentially non-sanctioned meals that you pay for. But you could do this to kind of generate kind of a vibe traction. You could sell NFT subscriptions. You'd sell the quit. You could whitelist different accounts, and then maybe there was a way you would develop a new recipe NFT to join. So different ways to really engage like local community and having a nice gathering event around food.
Yes.
I did clone myself because I found now 3 DAOs I want to be in. I like the idea of just ripping, let's call it friends with chefs, just to try to see if by friends with them.
It's true. That's a good one.
Did I? Oh, and then we would play ping pong with Fang's table tennis group and go on a tree tour with Jimo.
Beautiful. Okay, I think we got through all 5 DAOs. I love all these.
Yeah, me too. I don't have a whole lot planned for the end of the session besides just like, if anybody actually wants to start these DAOs, consider me a resource. Consider, I'm sure anybody here, like, but the best DAOs are like, have some like, intrinsic creation. Like we could, I don't know, should we create Telegram groups for these DAOs? Should we could also just like start playing around more with like, doing some real working sessions around what would it actually mean to structure this thing. So kind of curious, like what would be what would be like useful in a future session around like taking these ideas and going from idea to DAO. Like what do people find like they need out of like, yeah, whether it's like incubation or something like that. Like maybe like what could this group do to help?
And maybe as people are answering that, I would love to welcome Kia at some point, whether it's right now or later. It's just kind of like, if you have any reflections on this exercise or some of the notes from earlier.
Yeah, that would be fantastic, Kia, if you want to speak to our our little experiment of chaos.
Sure. So it was really nice and fun to get to meet my group and also to like hear the results of the other groups meeting each other. I think also there's like a kind of higher level question to this of like, why even start a DAO? And it made me often reflect on kind of how I feel like the term DAO is often something that's like right now, for a lot of us, the kind of, myself included, like the organizational archetype that catches a lot of our like desires to make the world around us better. And that's really important that we have institutional agency and that DAOs represent this ability because it's really important for just daily human life and general human flourishing, that desire. So in the kind of question of why do a DAO, like we can think of so many things like around us that we would like to make kind of come into being. But often the mechanics of following through can be more difficult than that. Or often I found with a lot of the projects that I've done is that there's like a local association that's been doing my idea for way longer, way better. And it's really the question of, it made me have the reflection of like, wow, like how we formulate DAO ideas could be very different because often I think we've inherited from kind of, I guess like the technology culture of the last like 25 years, this kind of thing of we will solve X with technology, and that's usually kind of really baked into the most pitches. And there's an expectation that you're able to basically put your pitch into a problem solution statement. And that it made me really reflect that maybe part of the organizational shift that DAOs present is looking less to be like, we are going to solve this problem, and more like we are going to build community resiliency within the context of this problem. So a kind of shift from the solutionism of the 90s on towards more like community resiliency. And that's maybe like what DAOs as an organizing archetype can offer us. And through this, like, I think just the idea of like being able to come together and like think about the things we want to work on and solve together is like proof that like that community resiliency is really like the heart of the idea rather than a byproduct. And yeah, and just like the methodologies by which we even think of DAOs to begin with are really important. And often we need a DAO when it comes to resiliency and kind of decentralization, but often it's the step that's maybe like 5 steps down the road rather than the first one.
Yeah, I really love that. Thank you, Kia. And it reminds me, there's this quote from a prehistory of DAOs, which describes that the efficiency DAOs aspire to may not be defined as an economic function, but rather deeper practical knowledge. You talk about memes and lores. There's a link to infinite games, and just that different way of being seems to be at the core. And so I know there's questions and an advocacy for to DAO or not to DAO in the chat. So maybe this is some reflection there. Be open to questions, thoughts, if anyone has any.
One thing that comes to mind, Isaac, based on the question you asked earlier, things that might be helpful in the future. One thing that you mentioned in the last chat that was really, really helpful is the Gnosis safe example of even if you change certain elements of the DAO, like that doesn't have to change and how flexible it is. I think this whole idea of let's say in that scenario to DAO, not to DAO, you decide to DAO, then it's how do you not put yourself in a situation where you've made decisions that cannot be changed? So what are the things that you can do that are flexible, even if you haven't figured it out quite yet, because you're going to learn as a community. I think knowing what those things are could be helpful, because I guess in some of the conversations that I've been in, it's almost a little bit of analysis paralysis. You're worried to make a decision that's going to become irreversible.
Yeah, it definitely like about because like even so I mentioned like the call I was on before this where it's like these burners were like let's create it, let's make our camp a DAO, and like changing their whole organization and making it a DAO is like seems overwhelming to them. But it's like, all right, let's just like use a DAO to like have one specific submission that's like kind of temporary, and then seeing what emerges from that. Yeah, like the temporary aspect and like growth is like, yeah, making it so that it's not so high pressure when you're just kind of going in and making those first couple decisions. What's the best way for us to incubate these things? Like, is the Slack? Should we like create Slack? Like, I don't logged into the Slack, but like, should we create channels for these DAOs?
That's a good question. We could definitely create project channels for DAOs that would like to keep the party going. I like this Miro board as a place just to hold ideas. I've been trying to add notes in this first area. Pattern languages might be another place that you could take some of the energy, given even if you don't want to actually start the particular DAO that you've advocated for today, maybe there are some patterns that you thought of. I'm thinking of Roskas from Jason as like a really interesting pattern that we might consider dropping into the doc. And if there was other patterns, effective altruism, financial literacy, that those ideas drove you towards, that could be another place for things to continue into. But yeah, definitely happy to start Slack channels for people. Dinner DAO or Chef DAO, we definitely want to do in Kernel's context. It's always been a promise that if any Kernel fellows are together in any city, we would be happy to pay for a dinner. So I could imagine that progressing a little bit.
Sweet, awesome.
A question in the chat. Go ahead, Glenn, go ahead.
I was just thinking on the meme DAO thing. I know that Gitcoin does a lot of this kind of memes around public goods that Sid does a bunch of stuff with, and there might be some way to use that as a motivating force within kernel to keep the thing going.
Michelle, you had a question? Maybe we could.
Sure, yeah. I think around the topic of being able to dissolve DAOs when they, no longer make sense, or to like it feels like there's a lot of like excitement around like creating DAOs, and it's like the question around like what is a DAO, what should be a DAO, what should not be a DAO. And it's almost like when things become a DAO, it's like you have to have collective governance in order to dissolve it, I assume, if the DAO is structured in a way that allows for that. And so in the dissolution of the DAO, I feel like it's almost like you're like what parts of the ego also get dissolved in like the people that have like turned it into a DAO, and like how do we allow for that release when it is in like the best interest, but like when but people still have to vote on it at the end of the day, if that makes sense. So it almost feels like the feeling around like grieving something when you are stepping away from like a position, or when you're like losing something. Can we turn grieving into a celebration of like, hey, this is something that we tried and something that we're going towards that didn't end up working, but like allowing for that separation to be a collective process. So more of like a philosophical, like a metaphorical question, but I feel like it's an interesting one to take in mind.
Yeah, you could even like in the Jewish tradition, there's like I'm not Jewish, so I don't really know the word for it, but after like a year, they like get together again after the death of somebody. So with a DAO, you could basically do the same thing where you could like, let's close this DAO, and then like in a certain amount of time, you could like reunite and then like say, hey, does this need to be kicked back up? A different little mechanic there.
Yeah, or even DAOs that have a like stated, end period where it's like, okay, like the default path is to dissolve, but like if it makes sense to continue it, then we, like have a ritual that continues it, but maybe the default state is for it to dissolve naturally. So similar to, I think, like human life too, like there's like a default state to like, I mean, maybe this will be different in a couple decades when we have the option to upload. But it's like the default state is to, like, I guess, like pass. And for DAOs and more perpetual institutions that are like companies that don't necessarily have a biological end date, it's like the dissolution almost always is attributed to like bankruptcy or something that's bad. But I wonder what incentives we could even play into this structuring that make it more like a celebration or a collective alignment towards like what actually makes sense.
I appreciate, this idea of creating some sort of cultural protocol within DAOs, so that just the human part of, when something doesn't work or whatever reason you have to leave, there's not that, because that can also, feed resentment and, just kind of taint the overall atmosphere around DAOs. So like, one of the things that's beautiful when, you kind of go into a project and maybe you didn't achieve the actual initial goal, but along the way you received all this wealth of information or better direction or what have you, or resources that can be celebrated when a DAO doesn't necessarily die, but transitions in some way, right? Just to use a kind of, better word than death of a DAO, right? But it's transitioning, celebrating, wow, what we learned from, like, honoring the journey itself, as opposed to just focusing on, did we meet our goal? Did we meet our goal? Did we meet our goal? So I appreciate you bringing that up, because I think that's something that needs to be implemented just in our approach in creating anything, but definitely something like this. So thank you.
Sean said graduation to DAO heaven, which is like so funny. It's like what's that called again? It's like the hallway, like where like Rolling Stones, and it's just like murals and pictures of like all these like great people.
The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like a DAO Hall of Fame. That'd be like. Really
Yeah. And also, again, even if you didn't achieve your goal, I'm sure I just really cannot understand or believe that if a group of people come together to achieve something, that things aren't still achieved, even though the initial thing wasn't achieved. So to celebrate that still is celebrating the history of the impact of DAOs.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm not sure, Isaac, if there's any particular direction you might want to take it, but I think the focus on custom and ritual seems to be coming up a lot. And for me, that's quite exciting and enjoyable to imagine because it's just that different feeling for what the space is that feels like the core essence of what makes a DAO an interesting new area to explore, that there can be a different energetic feeling, there can be different customs and rituals and feelings about creation and dissolving and everything in between in terms of how the space feels perhaps more grassroots, perhaps more peer-to-peer, more open for experimentation without any single leader. But these things at a high level are hard to grok when, for me, thinking about dinners, it's like slightly easier because it's just different people coming together to enjoy a meal and people tend to float into different roles. I'll just call out Michelle because Michelle really did make a really big difference on that one dinner we did in Denver. She wasn't slated to be another chef, but kind of came in and helped a lot with the salad and just made sure that the dinner went well. And so for that environment to be what could be shared amongst people in different contexts, it seems like that's where the promise lies. Yeah, that's fun.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah, that's all I have for today. But like, yeah, lots of great direction of where we can take it.
All right. Well, cool. Well, if no one else has anything, we can wrap a little early. If you do have feedback for us, Isaac, Kei, and I are available on Slack. We have one last session, which is actually on the last day of KERNEL Block V. So we hope we see you there. It might be another quieter spot with about 30 of us. Bring your kids if you have them. David, thank you for bringing yours. And we'll see you all very, very soon.
Thanks, everyone.